Old Nintendo Gamer.
And son.
So I don't have much written down for this either this week, Nick, and as I touted in our news section as well, with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge remaster, it's not really a remaster, it's basically a revival of an old franchise from like an 8-bit, 16-bit kind of era, and then brought into modernity, just like Streets of Rage 4 has done in the last 2 years. Ghosts of Goblins Resurrection has done this year as well. So games like that, and even thinking of I suppose new games like The Messenger, things that revive a kind of Ninja Gaiden and then turn it into a modern game, but retain that kind of 8-bit, 16-bit essence to its core. That's what we're going to talk about in a big topic this week. It's games that haven't had that treatment yet, and what we would like to see treated as well as Streets of Rage 4 has been treated. And a final shout out before you start us off, Nick. Final Fight is going to treat us either this year or next year as well.
That's true, yeah. So that's coming as well, isn't it?
Looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you have on the agenda if you were a game developer, Nick?
Well, we decided to take 3 game series, didn't we?
Yes.
Each. And I've got 1 8-bit game and 2 16-bit games. So I'll start with the 8-bit game. And I actually said this last week, but I'm going to say it again. Zelda 2. I would like Nintendo to make another Zelda game in the style of Zelda 2. So that means, as we said before, side-scrolling dungeons and sort of simplified overworld exploration, not the sort of, sword stuff that we see from Zelda 1. And I think if they gave it a unique art style, maybe something similar to Four Swords Adventures, I think that would work nicely. They're sort of not really anime, but it's kind of like between Link to the Past and cel shaded somewhere. Minish Cap, maybe, let's say, that sort of art style. And then for the side scrolling, a different art style, just to basically sort of distinguish between them. I think that could work.
When you were talking about that was it last week?
Yeah, last week, yeah, I think it
seems
was.
Longer ago. It could, yeah, probably. I was thinking of, you could Smash Brothers fighting side-scrolling, but then I'm thinking, no, there's been some wonderful side-scrollers with a kind of Dark Souls bent to it. There's that unto the end and stuff like that. Something which is more methodical in its kind of fighting and not sword slashing or anything, but you have to really think about when you're going to attack and when you're going to block and all that.
And attacking up or attacking really down. Well. Yeah. I think it would work really well. I mean, that's the problem with Zelda 2. I know HOT finished it for his 35th anniversary, but I can't go back to it. Like it's just not fun to play, really. In some ways, especially the overworld, I find that really dull, and I think they could take that concept of the overworld, how it's not the same as it is in other Zelda games, but still try and make it a little bit more interesting. I think it could work. But for me, it's the side-scrolling stuff, especially the dungeons, which I would like to see. And yet, like you said, like a Dark Souls approach to combat would work. Make the game hard, basically, like the original is.
So do you want to see like it called like The Legend of Zelda 2 or a completely new game?
I'd say remake it. Remake it. Give people a chance to actually play it. Because I don't think many people have or many people want to. But I suppose as well, like an original game would still work. You don't have to use that overworld and those dungeons. Or if you did, I think you could definitely give it a Link Between Worlds treatment and sort of bring it into a more modern era. But yeah, that would be my first choice, Zelda 2.
I'm going to go for a 16-bit game as my first choice, and it's because it's a game that I lived from my comprehensive school, about 10-minute walk, 5 minutes run, which was very handy during lunch breaks. And you could literally down your lunch in school, or go down the local convenience shop down on the corner near my house, pick something up for lunch. Take especially my best mate, shout out to Paul if he's ever listening to this podcast. So for the remainder of lunch break during comprehensive, then we were playing Sensible Soccer on the Amiga, but it did come out obviously on the SNES as well. I've never played the SNES version, so I'm unaware of how well it held up with a D-pad rather than a joystick, which was our preferred input method for this game. What a game Sensible Soccer was. So to bring it to modernity, you wouldn't have to do very much to the game anyway. The game thrived on its sense of gameplay, a feeling of passing the ball. And basically, it's taking soccer, and your goal is at the top and the bottom of the screen, so it's vertically scrolling. The guys on the screen, the players, are very, very small, pixelated, but beautifully animated for that kind of pixelated animation. And it's just the gameplay. The gameplay, I've played lots of football games in the past before that. Kickoff 2 was another classic on the Amiga, which but it never felt, the ball always toppled in front of you, you know. It never felt like you were in control of it. In Sensible Soccer, the ball sticks to your foot and all that, but it doesn't stick to your foot so much that if someone tackles you, you lose the ball as you should. It feels like an arcade soccer game. This is not a simulation, of course. But as an arcade simulation soccer game, I think none that I've played ever since have done it better. And if there was to be a proper remake of this 16-bit Sensible Soccer coming to the Switch, that'd be a day one purchase for me. They wouldn't have to do much to it for me.
I've never played Sensible Soccer. But Kickoff 3, no, I never played it. Kickoff 3 was my favourite football game on the SNES. FIFA International Soccer was okay. And then I had Striker as well, was another one I had. Which is similar to Sensible Soccer because the camera's sort of from the top. Yeah.
Slightly isometric, very ever so slightly, just so you can see where the players are.
It wasn't very good. But you could do indoor football on it, actually. It has an indoor mode. But yeah. Good, it's a good choice.
There was the precursor to that we used to play was Microprose Soccer on the Commodore 64. That was a lot of fun. But as soon as Sensible Soccer came along, it just blew it out of the water. It was a completely different game.
Yeah,
amazing fun. My
next game is going to be a little bit of a cheat, and it's going to be the Disney SNES collection. And I've got 4 games, 4 of my very, very favourite games from childhood. 2 of which have already been re-released. So that's Aladdin and the Lion King.
Lion King, yeah.
And the other 2 are Goof Troop.
You talked about that.
Which was a fantastic Zelda-like game. Best played in co-op, actually. So you had one as I don't even know the names. One as the tall one as the small one.
Goofy, wasn't it his son? Was his son?
Maybe.
I can't remember Goofy's son or whatever.
But, one of them was tall, slow, and powerful, and the other one was small, weak, and fast, basically. So that sort of dynamic worked really well. Like the tall one could only do certain things, the small one could only do certain things. Really, really, really good. Like top-down, puzzle solving, kicking blocks, basically like Zelda. You had a hook shot as well, and some other weapons similar to Zelda. That was so good. Me and my best friend finished that a few times in co-op. And Mickey Mania is the last one, which was also another game that I really enjoyed on the SNES as a kid. And it starts with Steamboat Willie, and you basically go through all the sort of big Mickey Mouse.
Is this a 2D platformer?
It's a 2D platformer, yeah. All of them are except Goof Troop. So Lion King, Aladdin, Mickey Mania, 2D platformers. And Goof Troop's that sort of Zelda-like game. And I'd love to see this remastered, basically. Like Streets of Rage 4, cel-shaded graphics, maybe tweak the physics a little bit, especially in the Lion King. Aladdin's fine, that doesn't need touching. And from what I remember, Mickey Mania was also fairly decent in terms of platforming. But I remember having issues with the Lion King. it never seemed to work quite right in places. So yeah, I don't really like or watch anything Disney anymore, but these 4 games really, for me, were pretty special at the time. So I'd love to see them come back.
I'm gonna just add to yours, Beer. Yeah, there were other Disney games that I played, like the Rescue Rangers.
Never played
Chip
that
and Dale
one.
Rescue Rangers.
That's on the Afternoon Collection, which I've got on PC.
I'm sure it is, yeah. Tailspin.
Also on the Afternoon Collection.
Was another one. They're very, very similar. They, once they started making this kind of Rescue Rangers, Chip and Dale, and then Tailspin, they all kind of followed the same formula.
But they were Capcom, weren't they? Those ones.
They were Capcom's, yeah. They were the Capcom ones. Just like DuckTales, and all those stuff. You can add all those to it. Let's have our Disney collection, but
remastered, yeah.
Yes. So my second one is going back to the 8-bit. I have quite a few. I've got a list here, and I didn't know what I was going to talk about until now. So I got quite a few honourable mentions just to blurt out at the end of this podcast. So my second one is I love my top-down twin-stick shooters.
Mm-hmm.
And on the NES, when I was towards the end of the NES's kind of cycle, but before the SNES came out, there was Gremlins 2. I just have fond memories of this. It must look awful now because I've never gone back to it. But I really, really have fond memories of this single player, slightly isometric, but top down. It wasn't really a twin stick shooter because obviously you only had the D-pad. But, you shoot in the direction you're looking, but you could turn it into a very, very good twin stick shooter. And why not, being as you're remaking this and making it beautiful and making Gizmo look as cute as he's always ever looked, do it so you encompass both the movies into one game, basically, as a twin stick shooter. Because in the second game, which was great, Big Gremlins 2, obviously the game based upon the second game, Gizmo did go a bit John Rambo, didn't he? And ended up with a bow and arrow in there. So that's where the kind of shooting mechanics came from in this game. But it delighted me when I was a kid. I'm actually afraid to go back to it to see if it's held up. But something with reworked modern twin stick shooting values with Gizmo and against the Gremlins, because those movies were also wonderful, I would look forward to.
I've never seen any of the Gremlin films.
No,
just a little bit before my time.
It's got my my childhood sweetheart Phoebe Cates. That was probably my biggest crush when I was a young boy.
I'll have to watch them one day. I did have a Gremlins Game Boy game, though. I think it was the first one. And I also... Yeah, Gremlins.
Well,
it was
wasn't the one on the Game Boy platformer? It was, yeah. I played that one as well, yeah.
For me, then, the final game is actually something I've played on the Wii for the first time. And it's not a Nintendo game. It's a Sega game. And it's Gunstar Heroes.
Very good.
I would love to see that remade because I had a lot of fun with that on the Wii, on the Virtual Console, and there's not really anything like it. That sort of really fast-paced 2D side scroller. I suppose maybe Mischief Makers is quite similar, but I've never played that, so I can't, because it's made by Treasure as well, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah. So yeah,
Mischief Makers is a little bit slower, I think. There's an emphasis in Mischief Makers to pick things up and check things out. So it does slow the combat down. Gunstar Heroes plays a lot faster.
Yeah, and that's just what I'd like to see. Basically, something similar can be a sequel, can be the same game remade, or given the Streets of Rage 4 treatment where they use similar characters, similar music, but it's a new adventure. So I'd love to see something like this come out, just because I don't really think there's anything like it. There wasn't then, and there isn't really now. So
there's not enough of it. That's for sure. I played it on the 3DS, the 3D version. It was great.
Yeah, it was good fun. Yeah, that's my third choice.
Alright, my third choice is another one which came to the SNES, but I actually played it on the Amiga again. And 2 games came out in this series. So bundle them together or make a completely new one. And it's because I've had such a good time with Exmorph Defense, which is another twin-stick shooter, but it's got that top-down twin-stick shooter with a beautiful feeling, because you're this little alien spaceship which is hovering above the Earth, and it's got this beautiful feeling of drifting around and strafing around enemies while using that twin-stick shooting, and that adds in turret defense as well, tower defense mechanics in there. But there were games back when I was a kid which were so difficult, but beautiful looking on the Amiga, in that kind of thing, called the first one that came out was Desert Strike, and the second one that came out, the follow-up, was Jungle Strike. These were made by Ocean Software, which were,
classic.
At the time, classic European developers who were firing on all cylinders back then, making all sorts of games. The amount of hours I spent losing, because I didn't do very well in them, but still enjoying myself in that isometric top-down, flying this Apache helicopter into enemy strongholds, and then you're basically strafing around enemies to take them down. You had a normal kind of machine gun. You could upgrade to some missiles, which would be more powerful attacks. You have a secondary weapon as well, which you could flick between. It was an eye-opening experience, and something I think it was the first time I'd ever played that type of game on a console or a computer back then. So I would love, just for my nostalgic purposes, them to remake and make it look, up to modern standards, and add in those kind of RPG mechanics of making your Apache helicopter tougher as you go through the entirety of the game.
Yeah, good choice. Yeah. Never played either of them. But are any of them available on the online service or not?
No. Not on the Switch, no. I had to flick through it then. No. Definitely haven't seen Desert Strike or Jungle Strike on there. Don't know if it's licensing or something like that.
Maybe.
It's a shame. So those were our three, I suppose, most wanted. But for me, I could have added anything could have been replaced by something else depending on how I was feeling today. So I made a list of how many I got: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I got 12 games here. And then I just chose the 3 that I felt like just now, basically, and talk about them. Are there any other ones you want to just briefly mention?
Not really. I mean, they were the 3 that instantly came to my mind when we started discussing it last week. I think maybe I'd like to see some of my old Game Boy games remade, or SNES games, so like stuff like Bionic Commando, which I had on the Game Boy, Gremlins, as I mentioned. Ghostbusters was good on the Game Boy, I remember liking that. I also had the Flintstones, which was a pretty bad platformer, but I did finish that on the Game Boy. Don't think that was Capcom. Could have been, though. Flintstones.
Can't remember that one.
What did I have on the SNES? There was a really bad game I had on the SNES called Super Troll Islands. But, the sort of toy trolls. It was basically there.
The spiky
yeah, it was that. But it was quite cool because what you had to do in that level, it was like De Blob, basically. So everything's grey, and as you walk on each platform, it adds colour to the world. So even though it was a pretty bad game with terrible platforming mechanics, the concept was something different. So I enjoyed that part of it, and it was quite hard. There's nothing
challenging you in a way to explore and cover all.
Basically, yeah, to try and get as much done as possible. I think for me, most of the stuff that I'd want remade is N64 era stuff, like stuff that I never got a chance to really play, like Pilot Wings, for example. Or what else? There was a really good game on the N64, which was a racing game where you could build your own tracks. I think it was called Revolt. It was an RC racing game. So RC cars.
Don't have recollection of that one.
That was really
I'll have to look that one
good.
up.
Like there was like a garden level, and so basically you're really small and you're racing around these gigantic worlds. But yeah, that was fun. That was not as good as Diddy Kong or Mario Kart, and the handling was pretty bad, but something like that.
Especially when you can build your own tracks.
Smooth frame rate, yeah. But yeah, that was like kitchen, garden, bedroom, sort of those sort of levels, basic museum. There was a museum level as well.
Yeah, I love that kind of aspect, that Micro Machines aspect, but playing Hypercharged and Boxed, where you're that toy soldier in jumping around the kitchen, jumping around the garden. It's got this sense of scale, that it's very hard to pull off in a normal game.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's it probably from me. Just a few, little mentions.
A couple of my quick mentions would be Chaos Engine. I played that on Amiga as well, but it came out on the SNES. I played it on the SNES later. That was another top-down shooter. Very well thought of, and I thought of it very well back when it came out as well. You had choose an adventure as well. So I can't remember how many. Say there's four different characters, and each one had their own buffs. So it's starting to add these kind of elements of RPGs and choosing your warrior or your mage or that kind of thing in that game. That was good. Bayo Billy nearly got a mention today, just because they could do something. Greg was talking about Disaster Day of Crisis, throwing just a mashup of game styles in one game. That's what Bayo Billy did, as a precursor to that kind of thing. It had racing segments, it had 2D side-scrolling beat-em-up segments, and first-person on-rails light gun segments, all thrown into one game. They all played poorly, but there's something really good that they could do these days with it. Super Star Wars, they did the original trilogy in separate games. You could stick them all together, stick the prequels in there, stick the modern trilogy at the end, and just make a side-scrolling Star Wars game remastered in that kind of vein. Those Star Wars games are fantastic back then. And this was my last. Oh no, there's two more. Sorry. Two more. The other one was Cannon Fodder. I talked about that.
That's pretty good. I've never played it. But,
Now, it works better with a mouse because you're basically, it's like a overhead twin stick shooter. It could work like that, but with a mouse you can click on and tell your 2 or 3 soldiers where to go, and then point with that cursor to where to shoot as well. So it's kind of a slight strategy element added to this top-down shooter. I would love to see a remake or something like that. And the last one is RoboCop, which is an old 8-bit Commodore 64 game there, which was a 2D platformer. And after watching RoboCop the movie at a very young age, which I shouldn't have, but I did, loving the game. And a reworking of a good Peter Weller, the original RoboCop, nothing of this modern RoboCop, but a reworking of a 2D platformer with RoboCop would be very welcome indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good. Nice choices.
Thank you very much. Yours too. Anything else to add before we sign off for this week, Nick?
Not really, to be honest. Just I've been having a little bit of a nostalgia trip since our N64 episode, so lots of SNES and N64 games currently thinking about either getting or going through. So.
And Turok 2 is the next one.
Turok 2 is the next one. So hopefully by next week I'll be able to talk about it, but we'll see how much time I get this week.
Cool. It's going to be a significantly longer process, I believe, than the first one, that's for sure.
Okay.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give us a like if you've enjoyed our content. You can also check out our other great content on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the N-E Café podcast from all good podcast providers. Just follow the links in the description below.